Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the Letters of Light. We are going to be doing the letter Samech. Last we met 2 weeks ago, we were finishing up the letter Nun. We said that Nun is that straight line. It has to do with the word noflim, something that falls from a higher space to a lower space. We said the word Samech that comes after Samech noflim is that which lifts up that which has fallen. It has to do with an inner understanding of the self. It has to do with the line between the physical world and the spiritual world, and so on and so forth. So today we're going to do the letter Samach. Okay. So Samach, according to Maharal, he says, is a closed round letter, represents the idea of divine support, right? Like the word Somech, both in active sense, that God supports man, and the passive sense, that man relies on God. This reliance on God's support is a fundamental aspect of Jewish faith. It is essential to man's mission in life, as expressed in the closing words of Ecclesiastes, which is Kohelet. We say in Kohelet, Sof davar hakol nishama et Elohim yirad mitzvotav shemor kizeh kol ha'adam. The end of the matter, all has been heard. Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the whole of man. Okay. Sof davar kol nishma. The end of the matter, all has been heard. Fear Hashem and keep His commandments. The word sof begins with a large samach. You don't see it here, but if you were to open up a kohelet in the actual font, you'd see that the samach is a larger samach over there for the word sof, right? So he says over there it begins with a large samach, which symbolizes the foundational need for divine support, which means in Judaism, we understand that anything and everything is an extension and expression of God's will to provide for us. And in truth, if you want to think of it like this, there's a really good test to figure out how much of the stuff you actually believe in. Okay, so when someone goes through like a rough patch, and they've been a really good boy or a really good girl, they're doing all the right things. They're saying all the blessings, they're going to pray, they're giving their charity, they're doing their chesed work, and so on and so forth, right? So you have a mindset which goes through the following thoughts. They're going through trouble right now, right? They've had a hard patch. And now they start thinking about how it's not fair. I did all these good things for God, and God's punishing me, and I don't understand why He's punishing me, because I'm doing all these good things, and therefore why should I be punished? I deserve so much more. I don't understand that. That is one level of thinking, and is the lowest level of thinking when it comes to your relationship with God. Higher level of thinking is the following thought process, okay? I recognize that everything I have is a gift, no matter what I do or do not do. And whether or not God chooses to take something away from me or give it, it's up to his own grace and will. I'll never fully understand that. And therefore, even though I feel like I'm going through something difficult right now, I understand that this is part of His will, and therefore I accept it, whether it's a loss or a gain, which is a very high level thinking. But that's the level of thinking we want to get to. When we say the samach is a concept of support, both active and passive, right? That we need God and God works with us. He gives us our needs. This is the higher level of sof davar hakol nishma. The end of the matter, all has been heard. Fear God and keep His commandments, right? The word sof, we said this right, numerically, samach equals 60, which is the majority portion of 100. And when we come to numerology, just like you were going to see in a moment, the 6 days, the Vav, is 6. That symbolizes the completion of time and space and other dimensions. 6D is getting us closer to this completion of a greater unit. So there's the units of the ones, which is like all the numbers, 1 through 9. 10 becomes a whole other dimension where we're lifting up the numbers, we're making a set, right? And then there's a new pattern that emerges. We're going from 10 to 100, right? The tens column, so to speak. But in Judaism, once you go beyond that, it doesn't matter anymore, right? Once you go more than 100, you're in the 100th column, and the hundreds to 1,000. The greatest number in Judaism is 400, right? We'll get there when we get there. But right now, 60 is the halfway point, getting to 100, which is the completion of a system of tens. Okay? Otiot Rabbi Yitzchak. He says the final mem and samach are alike, that both letters completely close in form. Right? The mem and the samach, by the way, what comes after mem? And what comes after nun? So the nun is enclosed and sandwiched by these two concepts of letters that are closed. Not an accident, right? So the final mem and the samech are alike, right? Both numerical values of these two fundamental parts of the Torah. Mem is 40. symbolizing the written Torah, which was given to Moses during the 40 days and his nights on Mount Sinai. Samech, 60. The oral Torah, which comprises the 60 Talmudic tracts. So you have 40 and 60, how much is that together? 100, the closing of the system. Shabbat, the script of the Ten Commandments was engraved in such a way that the tablets were completely perforated from front to back, which means that if we had, we were looking at the 10 Commandments that Moses brought down, you would be able to see the letters, okay, completely from one side to the other side. It wasn't just imprinted, embossed onto the, what's it called? It was literally burnt through the stone. Now, what was interesting is that, well, how do you do that with the letter Samach, right? I can understand other letters that are connecting, but Samach is a complete circle. So he says over here, the Gemara says that cuts with the middle areas of the letters Samach and Mem, so feet had no natural support to prevent them from falling out. A miracle occurred, as the Talmud states, but Luchot Samech Umem Shebeluchot Benes Hayu Omdim, right? Which means that there was a miracle that happened with these two letters, that these two letters in the tablets and the Ten Commandments would float, right? They floated miraculously. The Samech is the only regular letter in the alphabet whose shape is completely enclosed, consisting of two features, a blank rounded interior and an encompassing exterior frame. Both aspects are subject to significant interpretation, which we will see. But here, Kabbalistic literature interprets both the empty interior and the closed outer of the Samech as symbols of God. Why? He is entirely spiritual without any physical form or characteristics, represented by a blank space inside. The uninterrupted round frame alludes to the earth being filled with his glory, signifying that wherever one is, he is surrounded by the omnipresent, by Hashem. Its circular continuity is also symbolized by God's infinity. He also has no beginning and end. So therefore, the Samech itself is teaching you a story about how we find Borei Olam. So when we say the Samech is Somech, we're saying that all things in the world get their kiyum, get their smicha, so to speak, from God. You are able to be animated, to stand, to work, to think, to accomplish what you accomplish because you, my friends, are being supported by the Infinite One. The way I like to think about it is like this. Imagine for a moment you were to create an image of a character or a full-blown character in your mind's eye. Does that character in your mind exist? And the answer is technically it exists, but only when you think about it. As long as you're thinking about that character in your mind's eye, that character exists. The second you stop, what happens? It ceases to exist. You are here because God is thinking about you. And the reason why you're animated and the reason why you're able to do the things you're doing is because you are very much involved in his consciousness. And if you weren't, you wouldn't be here right now. The only way the universe could exist if God wills it to exist. The will comes from Ratzon. The Ratzon is connected to Machshava, to thought. So this is all interconnected. He's thinking about you, and that's why you're here. So he is literally the essence of all things, just like the Samach is kind of like a reflection of the things that are on the canvas and outside of the canvas. That's a reminder to us about Hashem's role in this world as well. Maharal says, according to Rabbi Akiva, the outer perimeter of the Samach denotes God, the protector, and the interior symbolizes Israel, the dependent, right? The wall, so to speak, outside, God inside Am Yisrael. The center of the Samach alludes to Mishkan, where the Shekhinah rested during the Israelites' journey through the desert. The encompassing frame represents the tribe of Israel, encamped around the sanctuary. When Israel settled in the land of Israel, this symbolism continued. The center of the Samach represents the Beit HaMikdash, the dwelling place of the Shekhinah. The surrounding frame denotes Jewish people led by the king and high priest, forming a sanctified structure that radiated holiness to the world. As it says, Ki Mitzion Tetzeh Torah, right? With Yerushalayim, right? So from Zion shall go forth the Torah and the word of God from Jerusalem. Just as the body receives life from the heart, the world receives spiritual vitality from the Beit HaMikdash. That's Isaiah. He said those words almost 2,400 years ago. So, the idea that we still be having conversations about Jerusalem, in 2025, and it's a central conversation around the world today is for me, a very clear indication that there's something divine going on here. Okay, no one's talking about Athens. No one's talking about Rome. Okay, so the idea of the Samach itself is that it is the canvas which allows God to interact with the Jewish people, and it is the way that the Jewish people recognize God's support and their ability to do those things back for God. In another interpretation, this is the Breshit Rabbah, the Samech symbolizes an inner core that is protected by its perimeters. While the temple is essential to the world, it too is protected by the mountains of Judea. As King David said, Eseh anai el ha'arim mi'ayin yavo ezri. I lift my eyes to the mountains. Where will my help come from? Do not read the mountains, harim, but rather horim, parents, referring to the merits of the patriarchs and the matriarchs as protective shields over Israel. Sometimes we play around with words, double meaning. The word, what does it mean, mi'ayin yavo ezri? It's not coming from the mountains, it's coming from our parents. Right? Everything that we have is coming from the support that we had from the generation before us and the generation before them. Okay? Otiot Rabbi Kiva. The Samach also represents the Torah, the inner core of the written Torah, while the surrounding enclosure symbolizes the oral Torah, Mishnah, Talmud, Agadah, Halacha, which support and develop it. I often find that most people don't fully understand what the oral Torah is. And I know it's complicated because, I've spent some time thinking about it, but I just want to do like a little bit of a quick review, okay? The oral Torah is the system of Torah that could not be written down. God gave Moses the Torah itself, and in addition, he gave him a set of oral commandments that were not written in the Torah. So for example, if you walk into any Jewish home, you'll find them as mezuzah, right? It's a little parchment that is enclosed in a case on the lintel of your door, the door frame, right? Well, what do you write on that mezuzah? What words are put on that mezuzah? How do you write it? What material can you make the mezuzah? What is it made of? Right? How small? How big? All these things you will not find in the Torah itself. The mezuzah, the laws of the mezuzah is found in the oral tradition. The oral tradition was something that Moses gave over to Joshua to the elders to the Jewish people, and so on and so forth, from generation to generation. Now, there's disputes as to whether or not we would recall exactly what was told to us, and now you'll have two rabbis saying, well, I say, the mezuzah has to go, straight like this, and no, I say the mezuzah goes like this. Those are the two opinions in the Gemara. Either they should be standing up, like Sephardim do, or like the other opinion like this. The Ashkenazim do this. And they say that we don't know the actual tradition, we lost our tradition, and therefore we're going to make a hybrid of this and this, a little bit of this, a little bit of both, we're not sure. Right? That's where it comes from. So if you go into an Ashkenazi synagogue, you'll notice that when they read the Torah, it's on a bima, and it's the Torah is placed on an angle. The Torah is resting in the ark on an angle. Everything is on an angle because of this idea. The mezuzah is on an angle. Sephardim, everything is standing up. Torah standing up, we read the Torah standing up, because that's our tradition. And the truth is, many years ago, I was in Israel. There's a Mishnaic city that was unearthed, where they had homes made of stone. And of course, if you had homes with doorposts of stone, they would have been a slot for the mezuzah. And all the mezuzot in that area from 1700 years ago, all the mezuzot were standing straight, not on an angle, right? And so I'm pretty sure that this is the halacha, okay? But if you have a tradition that's Ashkenazi over there, you can go ahead and do your they say that the reason why you do it on an angle before you come into your home is because Judaism teaches you to compromise. We're not sure which opinion, so we're not going to make a machloket. We're just going to compromise, and therefore we'll do a little bit of both. The Sephardic opinion is no, there's only one right way, and it's the way that goes straight up. There's no sideways way, there's only one way. But the idea is still beautiful, meaning like there's traditions and we will accept the tradition. But at the end of the day, that tradition has to be predicated on something that came from Moses. I can't just decide I want to take a different angle. There's a logic to it. So, for example, another example of this. Candle lighting on Friday night. Is that Doraita or Derabanan? Is that a Torah? Will you find it in the Torah, thou shalt light candles? No. Will you find in the Torah that you shall make Kiddush on Friday night? The answer is no. Right? How do you make an animal kosher for consumption? It won't tell you how to do it in the Torah. The Torah will just say, keep kosher like I showed you. Keep the laws of kashrut like you heard from Moses. So it's obvious that there were a set of laws that were imparted down to the Jewish people that were not written. It's too much to be writing everything down. But because they were given over, there's room for a interpretation in the oral tradition. Interpretation doesn't mean that I can make my own stuff up, right? For example, most people will say, well, Rashi, the famous Ashkenazi, biblical scholar, who's probably one of the most important, rabbis that lived in the last 1,000 years. Okay, his commentary is essential. He unlocked the vocabulary of the Gemara. He helps us understand and gives us methodology of how to interpret psukim and so on and so forth. Okay, Rashi argues with his grandson, Rabbeinu Tam. They argue with one another. You have two kinds of tefillin today, Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam. Well, which one is it? Some say it's both. Some say it's one. Some say it's the other. Unclear. But what we will all agree is that there's no opinion that says they both made it up. Rashi does not make up his own opinions. Rashi is always, especially the Chumash, is always bringing down an opinion of something that is found in the Talmud, something that's found in the Midrash. He needs support for his ideas. You cannot make up a concept. There's no making up translations, making up ideas. It has to be sourced in something that's ancient. And in the old world, the way it worked was very simple. Most rabbis did not teach to large groups like this. Your closest students were like 4 or 5 students that you learn with, and you imparted everything that his rabbi had given him, and they're going to do the same with their families and so on and so forth. It's a very small, narrow tradition. As a matter of fact, if you are learning with me, you now are connected to the tradition of Moses. Why? Because my rabbi has a sheet of paper that goes back from every single rabbi that was connected to his rabbis. It goes all the way back to Moshe. Right? So I learned from someone who has a direct line. I could show you every single name of every rabbi, from my rabbi all the way to Moses. Now, it certainly does not mean I possess any intelligence. I know very little. Whatever little I've remembered, I write it down and I try to impart. But certainly, there's no room for a Judaism that is not anchored in oral tradition. The word for law in Judaism is halacha. What is halacha? It's halicha, a pathway. That's right. Meaning, why isn't halacha a law? And the answer is that yes, while it is law, the law will be applied differently for each individual because each of you have your own path that you need to walk on. There is a standard that we want you all to keep, but at the end of the day, there is a very open ability to interpret laws specifically for you and uniquely different for you, on the condition that the law is guiding you and bringing you to what we call the full observance of the law itself. To create a kula, a leniency for the sake of a kula, doesn't bring you back to the mainstream law, is a mistake. And every single time we try doing this as a community, where we lower the standards, we end up destroying the Judaism of that community. The higher standards is what helps preserve. There's supposed to be a balance in between the two. That often doesn't happen, but at the end of the day, we're looking for that balance. That's what we really want. Okay, so he says as follows, number 8. The gematria of Samech is 60, number associated with protection. Hine mitato sheli Shlomo, shishim gvorim saviva megibra Yisrael. Right? Shlomo had 60 mighty men around his bed. Right? It's a shir shirim. The Talmudic sages teach that the circular shape of the Samech is like a ball, cannot stand on its own and is liable to roll, symbolizing human frailty, the dependence of divine support. The Samech serves a profound visual numerical representative of divine presence, protection, and the symbiotic relation between God, Torah, and the Jewish people. Same idea, over and over again. Oznaim Torah. The first appearance of the letter Samech in the Torah with regard to living beings occurred in the narrative of the creation of Eve. Okay, we're going to get into the lady stuff right now, okay? So just don't hate me on this one, okay? Originally, God created man and woman as one integrated being. However, recognizing man's spiritual need for a distinct partner, God caused Adam to fall into a deep sleep and took out one of his sides. Yisgor basar tachtena. See that samach over there? Yisgor? That's the first time the word samach appears in the Torah itself. He closed up the flesh in its place into a deep sleep, right? And he fashioned from a woman. The use of the root samach gimel resh, to close, sagor, and the presence of the letter samach in the word vayisgor suggests an enclosure. indicating a separation with a purpose to provide support from an independent vantage point. Okay, that was her unique role over there. She's supposed to be Samech. She's supposed to support her husband. She is called the Ezer Kenegdo, a helper opposite. I'm on page 3. The Targum translates Kenegdo as Samich, a supporter. This implies that women's role is not passive. Rather, she provides essential spiritual and emotional balance. This is very important here, completing man's human mission. According to the Kol Torah, the wife is neither a servant nor a shadow, but a second self, making the couple together a complete human unit. I love that, right? Meaning, it's not that in other religions, women don't have an identity. That's why they're covering their face. All you can see is their eye. I'm pretty sure there's somewhere in the Middle East right now where there's a group of people that are trying to push that women should have, both of their eyes should not be visible. They only want their left eye to be visible. They only want you to have like this. They want you to walk, the women to walk like that. 2 eyes is too much. It's just too much. You guys just see too much. We have to limit the sight of the women in these countries, and therefore we're going to block one eye, and you're going to have only one eye to see. And they do this because you have no identity. A woman's purpose in those regions are there to only support and nothing else. Provide children, provide for the man, and nothing else. She has no identity. Her identity is an extension of her husband, which is why she always walks behind him. She's the shadow. Right? In Judaism, she's beside him. She's his partner. They have different roles. They do different things, but she's his partner, which is why she doesn't have to cover her face. There's actually a cult group in Israel that started getting women to cover their faces. Yeah. And so when this started, about like 12 years ago, Rabbi Yosef came out, he said, Asur Gamor, he crushed it right away. That's not us. That's not tzniut. Tzniut is not covering your face, okay? A woman is supposed to have an identity. Tzniut doesn't mean wearing a potato sack everywhere you go, right? Tzniut is about creating allure and mystery. It's about drawing people in. It's about not allowing the private parts of who you are to define you, but rather to give expression to your face, your identity, right? It's a very different understanding of women's rights. But certainly in parts of the Middle East, they don't understand it. So she's called the Ezer Kenegdo, a helper opposite him. She's Keneged, a supporter. Okay, so we did that. Number 11, to create wholeness in the man-woman dynamic, the woman must sometimes oppose her husband. Don't get too excited about this, okay? This apparent contradiction is resolved by the sages of Yevamot. Zacha, she's Ezer, v'lo zacha Kenegdo, meaning the word Ezer Kenegdo is written in a strange way. If he's merits, she is meritorious, she helps him. If not, opposes him. Her role is to support when appropriate and resist when necessary in order to aid growth. Not resist because I'm right and you're wrong. The resistance is about helping developing that person to have a broader, more expansive view of the world. Every person has blind spots. Mishnah Negaim says, Hakol ro'in negaim chutz minigiye atzmo. All may examine leprous marks except for their own. Meaning we can all see the mistakes of the people around us, but we can't see the mistakes of ourselves. Right? We're blind to ourselves. This principle is applied figuratively to all character flaws. A wife can therefore be supported both through encouragement and through constructive opposition. That's up to you. Okay. The letter Samech, and the word v'yizgor, also hints the entrance of sexual temptation into human reality. The sages teach us, Kishenivra isha nivra ima hasatan. When a woman was created, Satan or temptation was created with her. Since Samach and Samech, right, mem, okay, are phonetically linked, some texts play on the relationship. According to Rabbi Reuven Ibragimov, the word Satan can be associated with Samach mem, Sam, right? But Satan is not simply an antagonist. He is a heavenly agent whose role is to test man, giving him the opportunity to overcome temptation and refine his soul. The Yetzer Hara, too, is understood as a necessary tool in human spiritual development. As Bereshit Rabbah states, V'hine tov me'od ze yetzer hara. Behold, it was very good. What is that in that pasuk? It means the evil inclination. What is the connection between the evil inclination, Satan, and this Isha? So on a simple level, it doesn't mean you're bad. I know in the if you look up the etymology of the word for evil, you'll find out that it comes from Eve, right? And this was the Christian world of saying that evil comes from all women, and they gave birth to that. But they're not wrong completely, but they're not right either. Let me explain. You see, when we talk about temptation is can be a very powerful tool for growth, right? Temptation can be, I tempt my kids all the time. It's called bribery. Do this and I'll give you that. Do this, right? So temptation can be used for positive results, but it could also be used in a very negative kind of way. A woman's power is to tempt her husband to do those good things. Okay, that's her special power. So the Satan, that desire, that drive, that passion came along with her creation, and that's where I think it's misunderstood. It's not evil. In the Christian world, all pleasure is bad, which is why you become a priest or a nun. You completely revoke all connections to anything, sensual, right? In Judaism, we say, no, we embrace those things. We use those things positively for growth and development. Even, number 13, Rashi says, even opposition can be an expression of mercy. When Balaam set out to curse Israel, he's confronted by an angel. An angel of Hashem stood in the road up to oppose him. Satan was actually an angel of mercy aiming to save Balaam from the sin of its consequences. So you see how the word can be used that way. The Gemara in Shabbat is actually very fascinating. It's also important. This is part of the conversation about the oral tradition. In its deeper interpretation, let us Samech, the Talmud identifies Samech with the word siman, a distinctive mark or sign. And this teaches us, Aselecha simanim b'Torah ukne oto. Make for yourselves a siman, a mnemonic device in the Torah, and thereby acquire it. Among the best known simanim and study aids are, by the way, this is filled everywhere. Anyone who is a student of any subject, if you want to go ahead and to conquer large piece of information, you need to have a system that will help you remember these things. There's no system of just sitting there remembering unless you're just blessed with a really good memory. Most people, even people with good memories, will create a system that they use to help memorize vast amounts of information. If you want to read a really cool book on this, there's a book called Moonwalking with Einstein, written by Josh Fuhrer. And he's a Jewish reporter at the New York Times who was asked to report on a memory championship that happens every single year in New York City. And these were world memory champions. So one of the memory guys that he was interviewing said to him, it's really easy, you could even do it. And the book is about how he spent a year preparing and how he won. Never doing this stuff before. But in a nutshell, the idea of memory champions, what they really do is they have a system that they plug everything into right away to be able to memorize vast amounts of information. So this is what the Gemara says. Now, our ancient trick of becoming really smart, right? This is where there was actually a recent study that shows how the brain drain is happening right now in America. Most young people do not know how to think anymore because of ChatGPT and whatnot. No one feels the need to inscribe wisdom on their body and soul. And that comes through reviewing, remembering, and so on and so forth. Right? But the Jewish way of doing it is by creating a whole system. You have gematria, you have Roshei Tevot, Sofei Tevot, right? Using the first letter of the word coming with a new word, the last letter of a word coming with a new word, the numerical value of the word. You have Atbasht, which is a famous system. You take the first letter, the last letter, and you switch it, right? Mashlim B'Tagaim, parables, proverbs, and allegories, all sorts of different ways telling stories to remember the information. You have Natrokin, interpretive contractions of the letters and the phrases. Milotot Kod, catchwords or memory cues. Tzirufim, thematic groupings and conceptual patterns. These tools help imprint Torah knowledge more deeply and are seen as not merely optional, but essential for retention and internalization. This is all over the place. You'll find this in the Gemara, everywhere in Gemara. You'll find this idea of coming up with different ways of remembering huge pieces of information. The Torah hints to this in the verse. It says, "V'simu befihem," and put it in their mouths. It's pasuk in Deuteronomy. The word simu is understood and related to siman, hinted in the Torah is acquired through the structured memorization techniques. You have to, if you want to remember something, you have to have a mental or systematic approach to help you remember those things. Okay, great. The circular form of the Samech, symbolized by the fundamental truths reflected at all levels of Torah and reality. Their end is wedged in their beginning, and their beginning in their end. Does that make sense? What does that mean? It's infinite. Infinite means no beginning and no end, right? That's the constant going back and forth. That's the Samech, the circle, the closed loop, okay? This realization and awareness is of inherent unity between beginning and end, when comprehended in depth, implies equanimity at all stages, calmness in all stages of the endless cycle. This cycle is in fact the manifestation of God's transcendent light, Sovev Kol Alomim, right, which encompasses all parts of reality equally. This ever-present transcendent light is referred to in the Zohar as Shava u'Meshaveh Katon u'Vegadol. He's equal and equalizes small and large, meaning there is no expression of godliness in this world which is limited by any factor. Meaning, when light hits this room, there's certain areas under the table where there's shadows. That's not how it works with God. When God's infinite light hits something, it hits every aspect of it. The shadow itself is a manifestation of God's light. It's not an absence of light, it's just a different kind of light. Okay? There's God, He's in everywhere. The Zohar says that in our service to God, this implies that in relation to worldly phenomena, all things should be related to and accepted equally. This is the attribute of equanimity. This is as taught by the Baal Shem Tov in his interpretation of the verse, Shaviti Hashem l'neged tamid. I place God before me always. The root shva implies equality and equanimity. Do we accept the challenge that we go through in life with equanimity? Are we calm and collected, or do we allow ourselves for our feathers to get ruffled? Well, most of us, I'm assuming, allows their feathers to get ruffled. But if you really believe that everything is from the hand of God, right, then you should believe that everything that is happening to you is a test, an opportunity to become something bigger, better, and more. Shaviti Hashem l'neged tamid means I recognize that Hashem is with me always. And that everything that He's always standing there before. There is nothing happening outside of Him. Okay, number 18, while at outer levels of consciousness, one should remain unaffected by the transient events of this world. At a deeper level, one should continuously be in a state of aspiration to achieve higher and higher levels of clinging to God, dveikut, feeling His will through God and mitzvot. Can someone close that door? Thank you. In Chassidut, the sages taught, who is wealthy, ezu ashir, asamech b'chalko, right? This applies to worldly possessions, but not to spiritual matters, where one should never be satisfied, but constantly striving for more. This striving occurs within equanimity, forming not just a static circle, but a spiral and ever-ascending motion. This reflects the vision of Yechezkel, the wheel within the wheel. Galgal b'toch galgal, representing an inner dynamic circle within an outer static one. I understand the drive, right? I understand people, have wants and needs. And it's okay to have wants and needs. As a matter of fact, if you don't have wants and needs, you're probably depressed. That's not good. The way to get out of depression is by clarifying your wants and needs and then go and do everything you can to get it. Okay? When you no longer have wants and needs, you are unhappy. The word for happiness is simcha. Simcha is expansionism. Expansionism, blowing up, becoming bigger, only happens when you have clarity, a vision of where you're going. If you don't have it, you are unhappy, you are depressed. The letter Dalet. Okay? You don't know where you're going. Dal, you're poor. You're not the letter He. The letter He comes from the word, we said this before, is chamisha, simcha. Right? Besimcha. Chamisha, same letters. Machshava is also part of the word simcha and chamisha. Okay, besimcha, machshava. It's all there, right? So you have the idea that thought brings forward expansionism and happiness is important. Okay? Now, I want you to have all the things in the world. But if you don't have a drive for spiritual growth, you'll find yourself unhappy and depressed also. Because simcha, the expansionism, is not about the collection of material things. It's not about more cars and more vacations and more homes and fancier stuff. It's not that kind of expansionism. You should have those things, because those things can often give you the ability of expanding yourself more spiritually. But if all you're doing all day is just a focus on materialism, you will not be happy. And therefore, each of you should have a picture in your mind's eye of what it means to be a spiritually better version of the self. Because if you don't have that, you're spiritually depressed. And your spiritual depression is not like physical depression, it's worse. It's very hard to sense it. Often people that are spiritually depressed will use all kinds of things to distract them, like fancy things and food and drinking and drugs and other kinds of experiences. And you could do that your whole entire life and live till 120, never realizing that spiritually something was never there. But when we delve deeper into our spiritual selves and we clarify what we need to be doing spiritually, and when I say spiritually, there's two parts to this. One is the awareness of God on your life, and that I would say is like a higher level, and maybe even an easier level. But an even greater level is the refining of your character traits, which is the hardest thing to do, but the most essential thing to do in Judaism. Okay? So that's the outer levels of consciousness that we have to work on. The letter Samech is associated with support. In fact, the Gemara on Shabbat says, Samech noflim. Right? We saw this last week. He supports the fallen, referring to the Samech follows the Nun and the alphabet. In the verse in Amod, Nafel tosif kum betulat Israel. She has fallen, now rise, the Virgin of Israel. Another Micha, ki nefalti kamti. Though I have fallen, I shall rise. The first verse refers to those who depend entirely on our outer equanimity and cannot rise alone. You need God's help. While the second refers to one who acts as inner divine energy to ascend. Right? Do you need a lifeline, something to help you, or can you use your intellect, your mind, to say, I'm pulling myself out of this. I need to change. I can't allow things to remain as is. Two kinds of samachs. The samach, the outer samach, and the inner samach. Outer samach is here. Here you go. I'll throw you a rope. I'll pull you out. Right? An inner samach, right, is the will, the ratzon, to want to change your reality. And you can't change your reality unless you know where you're going to. You can have a will to want to do it, but it won't change unless you have a path that you're trying to get onto. Unless you have a vision of where you want to end up, you're not going anywhere. You will not move. The elephant and the rider paradigm, right? You are half body, half soul. If the elephant wants to go right and you want to go left, which way you're going? You're always going right, right? You cannot pull the elephant away. But the only way I could convince the elephant to go in my direction is if I have a clear understanding as to where I want the elephant to go. Because if I'm prepared, I'll get the elephant to come my way. This is the nature of the body-soul dynamic. You want to align the elephant with the ratzon of the neshama, of the intellect. If you know where you're going, you're not going anywhere, you're stuck. And I don't want you to be stuck. I want you to have a clear vision of where you want to be, so you can accomplish all the things you're meant to accomplish in this world. Okay, we're halfway through. Page 5. Sefer Yetzirah. Like two concentric circles, the outer circle's bottom descends lower than the inner, but its top rises higher. This symbolizes that the end isn't wedged in the beginning. Sof Bereshit, Reshit B'sof. The Ouroboros is what the Chinese call it, right? It's a snake that is eating its tail, right? So the symbolizes the end entangled in the beginning. The end is wedged in the beginning of the end. Thus, the outer circle represents a worldly service through equanimity. The inner circle represents the spiritual revelation and yearning, revealing God's very essence through simple faith and the physical world. Sefer Hatziruf. The form of Samech is enclosed circle, often symbolizing a wedding ring, reflecting the eternal bond and cyclical nature of creation. Why do we give a ring, right? In reality, the old custom was to give a bag of gold. I know you feel cheated, but especially today, gold is so expensive, right? But that's why I got my wife a platinum ring. Figured I got her a ring made of platinum. Yeah, even though she lost it, but anyway, happens. Wedding band, not an engagement ring. Yeah. Anyway, all right. Back then, platinum was cheaper. Not cheaper, but not cheaper than gold, but around the same price. Today, it's ridiculously more expensive. Okay. So the Samech is a circle. So you get the wedding band, right? If you've ever been to a wedding, right? You'll say to the Chatan, says to the Kala, she's holding up her index finger like this, right? And you know why she does this? She's saying, "You're my number one. You're my number one." No, that's not why she's saying it. She says this because this is the strongest of the fingers, and this is how she makes an acquisition. A woman doesn't take the ring, right? It's gross. She should not be treated that way. Okay, so what does she do? She takes the smallest part of herself, not the pinky, the weakest, the strongest of the fingers, and she says, "Here I am. I'm waiting to receive this from you." He puts the ring, will you accept me, or will you be consecrated to me with this ring? Right? The ring is, like we just saw, the infinite commitment this man is making to her. Whenever a man is going to make a commitment in Judaism, what does he have to do? He has to back it up with something of value, which is why at that point he would either give her gold, right, or a ring. So the question I always get asked, why doesn't a woman give the man a ring or gold under the chuppah? You know, the answer is, for a woman, we take her word for it. She doesn't have to provide anything, right? Her word, her being there is enough. But for a man, we don't know. And therefore, he has to do a maaseh, an action that shows that this is what I'm doing, right? So he is lower than her, and therefore he has to go ahead and commit to her by providing something of value. Okay. So the Etz Chaim says an empty circle represents the vacuum created by the initial tzimtzum. Right? We've spoken about this before. I'm sorry this is so deep today. Samech is a complicated letter. Tzimtzum is God creating a space which is void of Him. He removes Himself from a space, and in that space He creates the universe. That's what tzimtzum is. It can't be completely void of God, obviously, but it is the most void of God anywhere in the universe. Okay? Okay, so the first divine contraction described the Kabbalistic cosmology. Okay, according to the teachings of God infinite light, the Or Ein Sof was the infinite light, was withdrawn to create a space for creation. The spiritual void or vacuum is symbolized by the Samech in our lower perspective of reality. One that still experiences the effects of the Tzimtzum, life in the world history appears as. Okay, this is the idea, right? So when we live in a world of contraction, of no God, that, my friends, is Galut. Galut is, exile is the contraction of God, Him removing Himself from the world around. We don't see Him anymore, He's gone. Geula, right? Revelation, okay, is an expression of God's becoming more apparent. Geula comes with gilui, a revelation, to be revealed. The more God reveals Himself, the less galut there is. There's more gilui, the more geula. That's how it goes. So God initially creates it. Why does He do this, by the way? Why does He contract Himself? Why does He create a situation where He is removed from the picture? Everyone know why? Because if He was here right now, sitting in His throne and in all His glory, you, my friends, would not be able to make any choices. No bichira. And what makes you uniquely special, what gives you your identity, what makes you not a robot, is your ability to choose. You can choose what you do today, how you respond. Choose to come today and not come today. It's your choice. You came. Thank God you made the right choice today. Right? I don't know about last week. I wasn't here, but right? So that's up to you. So the Sefer Yetzirah says the idea that an end is wedged in the beginning, right? And vice versa. Sof Na'of B'tchilato defines all levels of spiritual structure. From the vantage point of finite beings, this entire relativistic vision of space-time, what we call finite universe, is itself a vast samach. It curls back into its beginning, and the beginning into its end. From the human perspective of the world, olamot, particularly the world of asiyah, of action, there is no escape from the finite, endless circle. Every path eventually returns to its beginning, highlighting a sense of repetitive, perhaps meaningless cycles. This is the problem of time, that it's constantly repetitive. Meaning, today's a what day? Today is Wednesday, right? What's tomorrow? Thursday. What's the difference between this Wednesday and last Wednesday and next Wednesday? The answer is nothing really. It's just time. It's just Wednesday. And every week we're in a pattern, whether you like it or not. It's a cyclical pattern. You're always going back. After Saturday comes Sunday, then Monday, then Tuesday. And the cycle is, there are 52 of these Sundays and 52 of these Mondays, but it's all the same day. It's a different date. Right? Shabbat, there's one Shabbat in the year. Okay? It's happening over and over again. Right? Now, what should be happening with each day is that change and growth only happens through small steps over long periods of time. You know the famous story with Rabbi Kiva, who was sitting by the river banks and he saw a drop of water hitting a rock. And what happened to the rock? There was a hole through it. And he said, what is that story about? It's about growth. How do you change something like stone? How do you change something so hard? Small actions over long periods of time. Consistent flow over and over again, small drops, long periods of time, and you make great changes. I could make a hole through a stone using water. It's crazy, right? How do I make a hole in my heart? How do I chisel my stubborn nature away? Small actions over long periods of time. And you have a system for it. Every single day is connected to a month, and every single month is connected to a year, right? The years are connected to a greater system of Yovel and so on and so forth, right? Bigger systems. We don't have to go that far. From our perspective, each day is an opportunity for some kind of growth. It's repetitive, over and over again, the beginning and the end, constantly interwoven. What came first? Which day came first? Was it Yom Rishon? Does the first day come first? Or was it Yom Shishi, the day that Adam was created? Which day came first? Maybe day one doesn't matter because no one counted day one. And maybe the sixth day of creation is more important than the first day of creation. Maybe it's more important than the seventh day of creation. Shabbat itself is the creation of not creating. Shabbat is the cessation of creation, which is a creation in itself. Because as God created, that became the nature of the universe, a world of constant expansionism. And Shabbat said, no more expansionism. That is itself a creation. The difference between becoming during the week and being on Shabbat. There's no change that happens at Shabbat. Shabbat is the experience of life, just sitting and being. I'm not going out and doing anything. I'm not becoming. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday is becoming, right? But Shabbat is being, okay? It's the closing of that system, right? Not the expansionism of that system. The concept seems to echo the philosophy of the void, as articulated in Kohelet. Havel havalim, amar Kohelet, havel kol havel. Vanity of vanities, everything is vanity, all is vanity, right? Further, the sun rises and the sun sets. You know that song, right? So the wind returns, it comes from here, from Shlomo Melech, right? The wind returns to its circuits. All the rivers flow to the sea, yet the sea is not full. These verses describe the cyclical monotony of natural life, an endless repetition and seemingly lack purpose. So when we think about the sun and the moon, we've spoken about this before also, the sun is the monotony of time, nothing changes. Shum chadash tachat hashemesh. And what is the moon? The moon is hitchadshut. It is my desire to want to find something new in that month. Shabbat is the hitchadshut of the week. Rosh Chodesh is the hitchadshut of the month. Rosh Hashanah is the hitchadshut of the year. Okay? It's chai. Just as the Samech at the level of Olamot symbolize the primordial void formed by the Tzimtzum, so too the level of Neshamot is represented by the impression of the Roshem, Reshimui, divine light left behind the vacuum. This impression is the secret of the soul of the universe. Just like the foundation of the building, which is hidden by the essential support, so too the hidden Reshimui upholds the existence. The righteous person is the foundation of the world. Tzaddik Yesod Olam. What does that mean? What does that mean, Tzaddik Yesod HaOlam? Right? It means that at the end of the day, the people that are clearly using this nature, by the way, there's two systems. Something called rachamim, mercy, right? And something called tzedek, din, justice. Which one should you be operating with? Should you be a merciful person, or should you be a tzedek, a din person? And the answer is you got to be both. Mercy without boundaries is evil. I see this today, right? We call it sympathetic suicide, right? The idea that you're going to be compassionate to people that want to murder you and kill you is suicidal. You have a problem, not them. We know they're a problem. They're crazy. They're a cult, right? But you can't have mercy without boundaries. This is the West. They don't understand mercy. We believe that, of course, you have to have mercy with boundaries. There's a limit. Yesh gvul. The samach is the gvul, okay, is the boundary. Din, without mercy, is cruel. You have to have mercy. You have to have both. There has to be a balance. The tzaddik is the embodiment of the foundational light. Look at 25. Hidden, yet central. Even a tzaddik who appears revealed must, to a greater extent, remain concealed and underground. Much like the impression itself. The merit of these tzaddikim, these world stands, the righteous and everlasting foundation. Tzaddik Yitzhak Olam. Talmud Bavli discusses how the world exists in the merit of such foundational figures. This mirrors the soul's role. Ready? To sustain the world from within, drawing divine energy into reality even if hidden. That is what we're trying to do. But it's really hard. It's hard to do that because I lose myself. The circle of the Samech teaches a powerful lesson about spiritual equality. All points in a circle circumference are equidistant from the center. At the level of the soul, this reflects the truth that all souls are equally close to God. In essence, this ties to the famous teaching of Kol Yisrael Yesh Lahem Chelek L'Olam Haba. When we dance in a circle, we dance for this reason, because no person is more important than the guy next to you. We're all in equidistance from the guy in the center. That's why we have the circle dances, Shem Shmuel. The approximation of, you know what that is? Pi as 3, used frequently by Chazal at Siervin, yields an exact match to the ratio of the perimeter of a hexagon inscribed in a circle to the diameter. The 6 sides of the hexagon corresponds to the 600,000 root Jewish souls. Shishim Riboy, right? Each side equals the radius of the circle, meaning each individual soul is equally close to the divine center. Each Jew, no matter how far he or she feels, is at the closest to God. Our distance from God is also a reflection of our distance from each other. The further I am away from God, the further I am away from you. The closer we come with each other, the closer we come to God. Unity becomes souls is the key to divine closeness. We cannot bring God into this world if we are far away from one another. All levels of the souls, if anyone has to go, it's 103, I understand. All levels of the world's souls, divinity, and Samech supports the fallen nun. In the act of support, the hands of the supporter, I did this with you already, you could see this on your own, but let's just go to the next. But the juxtaposition of the 2 letters, nun and Samech, forms a nes. Okay, the second paragraph in the Zohar over there. Miracle, alluding to the miracle of supporting the uplifting. The root nes means to lift and to raise, right? The fallen nun is actually surrounded on both sides by the mem and the samach, right? Somech. The mem and the chaf are pregnant in the full spelling of the word samach, equals samach, mem, chaf, right? Samach, mem, and chaf is 60, right? So at the level of the worlds, the very fact that the nature continues to exist and to function regularly and consistently in truth, a miracle, especially when one takes into account the falling apart effect of the power of entropy, meaning the world in its natural state should not exist because entropy states, second law of thermodynamics, that all things should be regressing, getting older, decaying. So how are things progressing if the nature of the universe is saying, no, it's contracting? We see expansionism. That's because of the Samech. The word for economic or psychological support in welfare is Saad. Also begins with Samach. The remaining 2 letters, Ed, right, which means witness. The 2-letter root of Edud, encouragement, therefore welfare, Sa'ad, meaning support, Smicha, and encouragement, Edud, right? So we're talking about a supportive encouragement coming from Somech, okay? Sa'ad, Sefer HaSharashim, The letter Samach, at the letter of the souls, denotes the support the teacher gives to the devoted student. This is my job for you. Not just educationally, but spiritually. This is the essence of the smicha, a transmission of authority, wisdom, and soul. This support enables the student to judge matters of halacha, continue the chain of Torah in Kabbalistic terms. This act is described as contracting the surrounding light of the teacher and transferring it to the inner consciousness of the student. This is symbolized by the Samech, a closed circular letter indicating containment, support, surrounding protection. The teacher, by placing his hands on the head of the student, contrasts the surrounding light, the secret of the letter Samech, thereby transmitting the wisdom, the secret of the hand, the yad, the letter yud, the inner consciousness of the student. So if I wanted to give smicha to someone, I got it. My rabbi put his hand on my head, right? I had to get that on my knees. He took out a sword. And he said, "Now you're not going to do that to me." But the same idea of knighting someone, this idea of smicha is literally this idea that he is empowering you. He's somech you, so that now you have the power of applying halachic principles, using halakha in a way to support the people around them. That is this concept of smicha. Chazak says, the Torah reveals this dynamic through the relation of Moshe and Yoshua. Take for yourself a student, right? Yoshua ben Nun, a man in whom there is a spirit, and lay your hand upon him. Somech et yadacha alav. And Moshe laid his hands upon him and commanded him. And Yoshua, the son of Nun, was full of the spirit of wisdom, for Moshe had laid his hands upon him. Ki samach Moshe et yadav alav. The physical act of laying on hands is not just symbolic, it was a spiritual transmission. Yoshua, son of Nun, we did this last week, or 2 weeks ago, Nun, right, it means fish, remember? The letters that symbolize falling is supported by the Samach, the very next letter in the alphabet. Together, Samach Nun is Nes. Do you understand how deep that is? Okay, you guys have to read this again, because it should blow, your brain should be like all over the floor right now. It should be gross in here. Right? Your brain should have blown out of your head, because this is very, very, very cool. The three were associated with ordination. So, Samach, V'yismoch, and Smicha have a combined gematria equal 2 times Yoshua. Not an accident. These words associated with the ordination. Yeshua's original name, Hoshua, right? With a hey, representing the receptivity, the feminine, like Isha. Moshe added a yud to drop the divine chokhmah, transforming Hoshea to Yoshua. The yud, the hey, forms a ka, divine name, embedded in the new name, indicating divine inspiration. Moshe, associated with the letter Mem, the fountain of wisdom, Ma'im, he draws from this source and passes Yeshua through the Samach to lift the Nun, Yeshua ben Nun. Okay, that's also very deep. We're almost finished here. A couple more minutes. After receiving the teachings of the student, is expected to digest and internalize it. Right? The need for all the simanim. The Talmud says, Siman oseh Tortecha, make signs for your Torah. The siman is linked with the samach from the root of sam, which implies support, summary, and structure. The students creates mnemonic signs, summaries, and symbols to help retain the transmission. Contraction, when, after fully digesting his teachings, the student must make signs for the sake of memory. Indicates that the student's total commitment to fully integrate and live by the teaching of his teacher. This devotion rises up into the heart of the teacher who inspires him to support, ordain his students with all his power of insight. This is the ultimate act of contraction. Relatively, the drop of a teacher, the drop of teaching is drawn from external level of the teacher's wisdom, while the drop of ordination comes from the teacher's true selflessness, the most internal and essential level of wisdom. This beautifully describes the reciprocal relation between the student and the teacher. The student contracts and preserves. The teacher is inspired to bestow deeper levels of soul and authority. And we'll end with the circle. The Samech reflects this, a miraculously reality, existence itself. When viewed deeply, it supports and sustains by divine providence. This support is often hidden and only revealed when a soul falls, like the Nun, and finds supernatural strength to rise. Even the word for welfare of support, sa'ad, begins with the samach and is rooted in the letter ed, which forms the root of edut, encouragement. Meaning, if you don't move yourself out of the place that you're finding yourself in, like we said earlier, you, my friends, are stuck. It's like quicksand. The way you pull yourself out of it is by having that clear vision the testimony, the edut, the encouragement, the desire to want to become something more, and Bezrat Hashem, you will become something more. Bezrat Hashem, next week we will tackle the letter Ayin. Have a great week, everybody. Thank you for coming.